You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
What did they tell you about me?
I'm not a brother, but I was only 4. I used to fantasize about you when I was in the orphanage.
Yes, I had the same dreams. I want this car.
Jonathan Miller would never do anything to break the law.
I need the key. Thank you. Bye.
He is a very fine, very honest gentleman.
I didn't think you were ready, but you are. I knew it when I saw you with him. Your whole body burns.
I'm not like you!
You tell yourself that it's love, but it isn't. It's blood. Death.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss 2 films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Spooktober is upon us, and we're going Italian mode. Join the sleaze.
We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for over 3 years. We are slowly approaching 4 years, honestly.
Wild. We're almost at 200 episodes.
It's crazy. We've got like 90 plus of those are bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about like new release genre films, and the movies are back. We have some exciting things coming up on the bonus transmission that, you know, might be coming out, in the next week or 2. We're going to be talking about like Paul Schrader's Card Counter. We're going to be talking about James Wan's Malignant. We got some stuff on the way. So if you haven't signed up, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast, I'd recommend doing that up. And speaking of which, we did have a bunch of people make the jump this week, so we're going to give them shout outs here. We had Daniel Olderis. We had Joseph, who signed up at the $10 a month, who's going to be joining us for the monthly virtual screenings that we do, which by the time you guys are listening to this, I think it's going to be next week. So if you are interested, I don't know what the movie is yet, but we might have already announced it on the Patreon. Jamie and I are going to be watching something. And we also now record these. So if you can't make the live time that we do them, you can always watch them after the fact, which we've been having some people do. We had Michael Herndon, who applied or who signed up at the annual rate.
Nice,
so thanks so much for doing that. Helps us out. We had Matt Lambert sign up, Jonathan Pietrafessa. We had Eon McGuire, Benji, Levi, Michael Burke, Mick Wiesen, Jessica Perlman, Parker Singley. Wow, I didn't realize how many people signed up this week. Trevor Renstrom, Volchtek Taluk, Fathamusa.
Nice.
One
Sounds
name.
powerful.
I love that name. And Gene Robin. So thanks so much to all of you folks for signing up. Hope you're enjoying those bonus episodes. That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is iTunes or Apple Podcasts. If you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts and I see the stats, I know that you are. I can see you listening right now. Scroll down to the bottom and give us a good old rating and review down there. It helps us climb the ranks over at iTunes and find new listeners. And then the last plug, as always, is merch. If you guys like the poster art that local horror artist based out of Toronto, Trevor Henderson, did for the podcast, you can basically get that put on anything you'd like. You could get an art print, you can get a notebook, you can get a hoodie, t-shirt, whatever you can think of. You can probably get our art put on it. That link is in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com for those interested. And all right, there's the intro. It's become a mouthful, but welcome back. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I think 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks, free listeners, would have heard from us. We would have had special guest Jared Gilman, the actor some of you might know from Wes Anderson's Moonrise Kingdom, Jim Jarmusch's Patterson. He guested on the show and brought with him 2 films that he wanted to knock off his watch list that I kind of helped him pick. And we ended up having a very strange double feature of 1975's Tommy, directed by Ken Russell, and George Romero's Martin from 1977, both films that I kind of loosely picked because I was like, hey, they're both the first names of boys from the 70s.
Exactly.
and weirdly enough, they both had interesting things to say about growing up in that time period and kind of reacting to the cruel world around you, and both featured some very different types of abusive families. But yeah, we had a great time breaking both of those down, especially because stylistically they could not be more diametrically opposed. We had fun talking about those with Jared. And then last week, there was a new Clint Eastwood film out called Cry Macho, and we realized that we've talked about Clint Eastwood the actor, but we had never talked about Clint Eastwood the director yet on this show, which was kind of an oversight on our part. So we rectified that and did an episode on one of my personal favorites that he directed, High Plains Drifter. Which is just one of the most hellish self-depictions an actor has ever placed on themselves, and for it to be the movie that he chose to be the first Western he directed, I think it speaks a lot to who he is as a filmmaker. And then we also paired that with The Outlaw Josie Wales, which is a little bit more traditional, a little bit more old-fashioned, a little bit more of an attempt at doing something, a little bit Fordian almost. But yeah, we had a very interesting time breaking down Clint Eastwood, both screen presence and director. So if you want that episode again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. It's just in time to see what he's doing at, how old is he? 91, 92?
Yeah, that's wild.
To see what he's still doing. But moving on to this week, we have a very special guest joining us over from the We Hate Movies podcast. He is the third We Hate Movies host to appear on the show. We're going to collect them all. They're coming.
Yes.
But we're very glad to have him this week, and that is Steven Sajdak. Steven, how you doing?
How you doing? Am I allowed to leave? You're saying collecting. I'm just kind of curious if that's this
no. We're
situation.
We're keeping you all in a small purse.
Okay, so that sounds good. No, I'm great. Thank you guys for having me. I've listened to a ton of you guys, and I've just been a fan for a bit. So it's really nice to finally make it on the show, and I love the idea of an exercise of trying to pick a double feature. I was really excited to have that thrown at me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't sure what you were going to bring when I asked you, and I honestly was quite surprised when you did, because they were both films. I mean, Cat People I knew about, so I was kind of like, I knew I wanted to watch it, but the other one, I'll be honest with you, hadn't even heard of it somehow.
Yeah,
and I was like, how did that happen? So what did you bring with you this week, and why did you pair them together?
Good question. I brought Cat People and The Hidden, 1987's The Hidden. Did I get that right? It's 87? Yeah.
That's right.
Jack Shoulder. Yeah, for whatever reason, Cat People, I was introduced to when I first started dating my now wife. She lived with another woman who had Cat People on VHS, and we watched it all together. We were like, holy crap. Jaw on the Floor, what a wild movie. We wound up doing it on my show a million years ago, I think 2012 or 2013. And I've kind of wanted to always kind of revisit it, just because I've, a lot can happen in 8 years in terms of like your perception on stuff. And, also our show, even though it's not a hate fest, but like usually it's kind of really punching on the movie a little bit, even for the stuff we love. I was kind of curious to look at a more neutral setting, and I was really interested in this movie, The Hidden. There's a theater in Brooklyn, New York called the Spectacle Theater, and over quarantine they were doing some virtual stuff, and I would always look for it because it felt like I was leaving my home, which I wasn't doing. And one night at like 11 or midnight, they started to stream The Hidden, and it really just knocked my socks off. And
Oh, yeah.
I really, The Hidden was what I was leading with, and I was like, well, what would pair well with it? Well, I guess and Cat People kind of makes sense in terms of this. I think Cat People is the prestige movie that plays before The Hidden in the double feature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
That's the 10 p.m. show. You know what I mean? Like, and you drink during it, and then you're ready for The Hidden at midnight kind of a situation.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean,
Yeah, even though it was kind of funny when I obviously watched them, in chronological order when I was doing them, and I definitely left Cat People in like that's very clearly the more prestige production. But I ended up leaving it and going, you know what? There's something weirdly like more economical and sturdy about The Hidden in comparison to Cat People, which is like really just like it's a very vulgar translation of like something that it was more classical.
Right. Well, The Hidden works and Cat People doesn't. You know what I mean? That's kind of where we're at, I think. Because the Cat People is really swinging for the fences. The Hidden knows exactly what it is. And I think, what it
just does it well, yeah.
The things that I like that kind of marry the two is obviously it's like this weird monster under the skin thing, what it is to be human, what it is to sort of have a body, a lot of body horror stuff. And one of my favorite things, which is a alien and/or monster tearing through a city that I love, which is New Orleans and/or Los Angeles.
Hell yeah. Well, I think it's a great pairing, and I think that we're gonna jump right into it here. We are going to start off with Cat People.
I love you.
All right. We are talking Cat People, the 1982 American erotic horror film directed by Paul Schrader. It obviously stars Natasha Kinski, Malcolm McDowell, John Hurd is in there, Annette O'Toole is in there. And it is a remake of the original Cat People from 1942, which for anyone sort of like unfamiliar with that film, it's kind of like this old Hollywood romance melodrama that kind of transitions into this sort of like B horror psychodrama about a woman who, kind of has to repress herself because of her own ancient culture, or her feelings of passion will explode and literally transform her into a panther that will then devour her the person she's interested in and destroy her relationships. And it's this very sort of like very beautiful kind of like inky little romance horror film by it's Jacques Turner, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's John Turner. Just confirmed.
Okay, good stuff. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't crediting him where I should be crediting like an Edward G. Ulmer, because it's kind of like what I think of Jacques Turner in, where he did so many genres. Like he did Out of the Past, he did I Walked with a Zombie. I've seen his Western like Canyon Passage or like Nightfall. Like that guy did so many different kinds of movies that sometimes I forget which ones that he did and didn't do. He also did a movie called The Leopard Man, which he must have got because of Cat People, I assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, needless to say, I at the time that it came out, it was probably considered like a really trashy B horror kind of experience. But watching it now, with all the sort of like the pool water reflections and the shadows on the walls and the sort of the sense of implication and atmosphere to it, it plays a lot more classical to today's eyes, which is going to lead us into, I think, what Paul Schrader was kind of attempting to do, which was updating something that by the time it hit the 80s felt more classical and trying to update it for the more coked out vulgar 80s, including a score by Giorgio Moroder, who did like the Scarface score, and like that's definitely the tone that he's he's kind of like opting for. It's very interesting.
Yeah, this like the original is very classical. Like it has almost a mystery element to it. It's slower paced. There's a lot of dialogue and
There's ambiguity and mystery almost.
Yes, whereas this is just like right in your face right away. Totally
Very plotty.
Yeah. There was a lot more than I anticipated. Especially, I mean, the original was only like 75 minutes long, something like that, and this is a good 2 hours. So he definitely leaves room for more eroticism and craziness.
Yeah, and I mean, I obviously, like, you know, any kind of eroticism was shocking in the 40s, so it's like, well, what's shocking to people now? Incest. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, like, I know we're pushing buttons and we're trying to do stuff, and the incest thing is just so wild, and the movie is afraid of it in some weird ways, because a lot of it, you know, Kinski keeps saying, you can't be my brother, so, like, the audience is still, like, so people won't leave, I guess, this sort of thing. It's like, well, maybe he's not her brother. No, he absolutely is. And their superpowers are incest-based, which is kind of fascinating.
Incest-based superpowers. Oh, man.
It's wild. It's a wild film. I think it's like, the score is tremendous. The cinematography is gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the performances are really great. You missed, by the way, Josh, when you were going through the cast. Oh. We also have 2/3 of Ed Begley Jr. in this film because he gets his arm totally ripped off.
That is true. What a scene, too.
This is one of those movies I was really glad to revisit it just because it just sort of plays differently every time you watch it. The more you understand what's coming, it kind of plays better, even though I still firmly believe this movie just does not work as, like, it doesn't stick the landing, but I think it
Do you mean, like,
mostly
thematically?
does.
Because I had a hard time, like, really understanding the, like, I guess, what would you call it, the sexual politics of this movie. I'm not quite entirely sure what he was saying at the end of the day, especially when he starts implementing the incestuous stuff. I was like, okay, now I really don't know what you're, because before it was kind of like
that was the thing is they were making changes to the original film because I read up that they did feel like they felt like the sexual politics of the original didn't hold up in the sense that obviously it's, you know, it's about this woman who literally her sexuality, you know, is this thing that needs to be snuffed out. At the end of the original Cat People, they obviously kill her, or she is killed, and that's what sort of ends this kind of thing that's taking place. So apparently they rewrote a lot of elements in this to try to avoid appearing sexist when they were doing the same story of kind of like a woman who needs to be killed because her sexuality is, you know, out of control and
is
too
that
intense.
why they add Malcolm to have the kind
and
of
that's why they add Malcolm. But what's so weird for me is that the thing that's kind of thorny about the original film is, you know, that it ties, you know, her sort of romantic expression into this sort of destructive force, and that's like a very psychological damning thing that woman has to go through in that film. In this film, they put all of the bad stuff onto Malcolm McDowell. Yes. So for a lot of the film, I was like, she's not actually doing anything. She is not really going through much of anything except for her brother is a creep.
Yeah, she's more like just discovering what her connections with her brother and what that means with her new
they push all the violence and all the disturbing, destructive elements onto the McDowell character, which credit to Malcolm McDowell.
He's great.
He fucking kills it.
Oh my God. He's got to be naked the whole movie, and he's just like angry the entire time too.
He's eating his protoplasm.
That's God damn.
And so is this your first time, Jamie, I'm assuming?
Yes, first time.
It was both of our first time.
Okay, wow. Okay, so then I've seen this movie now 3 times, and every time I really get close to vomiting when it happened.
It's
and I knew it was coming.
It's just, I think it's because like you also you see him wake up, and you know you see the like sludge or goop surrounding him with the fur and the skin and whatever, and just that shot of it attached to him, and you see him taking it off, putting it in his mouth, and it stays there too, because it even looks like he swallows it. Like I don't know what they made him eat, but like it looked disgusting, absolutely disgusting. So yeah, that was he's very committed to this role, and he is asked to do a lot of very like vulnerable scenes. And I think he did a fantastic job for sure.
Yeah, it's one of his better performances for sure. Yeah, and he's ready to go. He gets it. I think the movie misses him when he dies. sure.
I think huge. I think the movie changes entirely in tone when he, she finds his body, and that's just that. Because then that was what made me realize that I was like, oh, she doesn't actually get to do a whole lot as a character because she's not wrestling with the same things that she was in the original film. She doesn't have this whole, her expression is tied to the pain of people that she loves. It's like she just met his brother.
Last half an hour. Really.
Yeah, well, and she's not directly responsible for anything that her brother was doing and hurting anyone or anything. So there's not really a whole. So in that last half hour, they pivot to actually, she's now kind of like this force of control. But again, she doesn't again get to, they do like these kind of recreations of some of the original stalking sequences in the original film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, she doesn't really like hurt anyone, or really, I mean, I guess she kills the one guy in the lake house.
John Hurt's like uncle or whatever that dude is.
Yes, and I remember just thinking, man, it's just weird. I don't know if it was just in the way that it was written or if it was in, Kinski's performance, but I got a lot less out of her character because she's just not wrestling with the same kinds of things. She was mostly like, I have a really creepy brother, and then the brother dies, and then she's like, okay, well, now I'm, I've been building this relationship with this, this sort of zoologist. And now I can't quite do that for reasons that were a little unclear to me, because the brother dies and then she goes to the spirit realm.
Well, she goes to Richmond, Virginia, takes a nap, and then wakes up in the spirit realm.
Yeah, okay.
She buys a ticket to Richmond, Virginia, because she needs to get out of New Orleans, and then she gets off the train and is in the spirit realm, and I guess that's the coolest Richmond, Virginia's ever been.
Then she becomes incestuous, which means that she can kind of control her powers a little bit better, so she has sex with him. And either way, we'll get into that when we get closer to the climax of the film and everything. But I definitely left this film with because I do really like the original, and I like a lot of what Paul was aiming for with this idea of kind of like just making the erotic aspects of it like very uncomfortable. I think that is kind of interesting. It was just weird that in the script that he was working from, that they went through multiple drafts on, they just made some weird changes that they felt like they had to make, and kind of just undermine some of the qualities that you kind of liked about the original. But from Paul's directing standpoint, I think that this is about as well realized as they could have done based on the premise of what they were trying to do with this remake, which was just, how can I make it as vulgar and horny as possible? And obviously this leads us to how Paul shoots everything that takes place in this film, especially including the lead actress Kinski. And it's obviously this movie is home to one of my favorite pieces of movie history trivia that's ever been concocted.
About like she sleeps with the director, but he was the worst or something like that.
Yes, Schrader fell in love with her and planned to propose to her at the wrap party of this shoot, because he literally you can watch him falling in love with her on screen, just the way that he shoots her.
There's a specific shot I want to talk about. Yeah.
But apparently she didn't even go to the wrap party. She just cut off all communication and left, and he eventually tracked her down months later, and she said, Paul, I always fuck my directors, and with you it was difficult.
Oh, Paul.
Which is the kind of thing that you're surprised Paul is still alive today.
Yeah.
He didn't erupt into flames when that happened.
Yeah, that's what would have happened to me for sure. But apparently around this time it was the most addicted to drugs Paul ever was in his career at the same time.
You don't
that probably helped him get through.
This movie will get you a little high, just a little high if you watch it.
Yeah, there's no way that he could
it's very
this
stylish
film without cocaine. There was absolutely no way. He needed to.
Lots of sudden slow-mo imagery, beautiful expressive colors, this very primal atmosphere of just lust and violence that suddenly will move into a Dutch angle or go straight up 80s horror in a way that Paul never did again.
One particular shot that I just thought was just it's so Schrader, was when she starts to kind of seduce, I think it's Oliver, the guy that she's interested in. And instead of having the shot be her and Oliver being led, it's actually a POV of the camera being led to her. And I just right away was like, Paul was like, I just have to get one shot where she's leading me to the bed. I swear to God, I know that's what he was doing. It's like you could just see it.
And she is naked through a lot of this film, and in the movie, the camera literally loves her. And I think it's one thing that I was like with her. I think Heard is wrong for this movie. One of the reasons it doesn't work. I think you need, a more beautiful man, like, you know what I mean, or just more of a prototypical like statuesque dude to sort of pull it off, because like Heard is just sort of schlubby, and it doesn't fit in terms of like this kind of, I don't know, like the
super
way that
sexual erotic thing.
Yes,
exactly.
He doesn't exactly turn the camera on,
right?
And also he just doesn't have. He's not really giving that kind of performance. Like we know from the erotic films we've talked about, especially the thrillers from the '90s, that you don't have to be a particularly amazing looking man, but if you're not, you have to have that kind of slimy screen presence to you. That's something that Michael Douglas had, and Heard just really doesn't have it. He kind of feels like he's the straight man there to react to the craziness that's happening around him. But then because of that, the movie will sometimes just forget about him for a while.
Right. Because he thinks the movie is like, oh my God, there's a cat person loose in New Orleans. Like, no. You want to fuck a cat person. Like, that's not like we're not doing like, chud here, but it's cat people. We're talking about like literally like weird psychosexual whatever. And I mean, like, he gets there occasionally. Like, I think the last shot is fairly good when he's feeding her, which is so bizarre.
Yes. Yeah.
But
that is good.
It's a lot to ask, and I just don't think he's the right actor for it.
And you definitely just wonder, like, this movie definitely feels like it's, trying to do a kind of like Monster from Another World kind of movie. And it did leave me wondering why this wasn't more like a De Palma movie. Yeah. Like why this wasn't like, more about the perverse psychology of like being in love with a fucking cat. Right. But no, it's more like this guy doesn't even realize it, even though in the filmmaking, some of it is there. Like, I love the transformation sequence after they have sex.
Yeah,
and the literal fucking leopard just like fucking leaps through her face, and her face like tears apart and stuff like that in the bed. Like that kind of imagery was the stuff that was the strongest for me, and it was weird to me that like hardly any of that was like in the actual writing, which was just odd.
Yeah. Speaking on just like the body horror too, I love how everything is like so wet and slimy. Like there's a shot of her when
so
she's
moist.
I know, dude. It's the shot where she's halfway through being like the human and the panther or the leopard, and it's just so like her face is soaking wet. It's got almost like slime attached to it, and they do really good prosthetics too. Very like jagged edges on her cheeks and stuff like that. It's pretty impressive, but so gross.
Yeah, that middle transformation, that like sort of demoness kind of thing she's got going is really, it's effectively scary. You know what I mean? Like this movie is almost a horror movie. It is almost, it's almost a lot of things, and it's definitely sort of, I don't know. I like her performance when. You're right, Josh, that once they give her the ball, sort of, so to speak, she goes for it. But like, it is McDowell's movie for the most part initially, but then he disappears a bunch, and it's sort of like that performance is so good. That like weird cat jump that he does onto her bed is so perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's just strange because if they were translating the original film a little bit more faithfully, like those scenes would have been hers. Like that, right. Those moments would have been hers. She would have been a scarier presence in the film. And I think that, the horniness tied with death is kind of there in the filmmaking, especially in the way, like the gore and stuff that does happen in here. Like when fucking Malcolm McDowell as a leopard just fucking tears that one dude's arm straight off. And you get the gushing blood out of the socket. You get like this slow-mo spray of blood all over her like white pants and everything like that. It's really disturbingly done. It's just strange that they felt like it would have been sexist to make her a monster. So they didn't do that. But unfortunately for her as an actress, that leaves her with less to do psychologically with this character, because she's not like scared of herself. She's scared of her brother in a way that's, very, very different.
All her scenes are essentially her just discovering things for like an hour and 15 minutes and just doing
She's very good at the wide-eyed.
Just having like lunch conversations. She gets a job at the zoo. Just very like normal shit. Meanwhile, you get to Malcolm and he has a scene where, he picks up this blonde lady and like, was it a cemetery or something? Where did he pick her up? And then the next scene, he's naked with her and she's saying like, oh, it's okay, guys get nervous, so you think that something didn't go right, and then it ends with a shot of her essentially giving him head, and then right after that it cuts to like an insanely bloody scene where you see an arm ripped off that's reaching for a phone that's off the hook, and
she tried to escape.
Wild. It's craziness. And those just
and that's also the scene where he eats all of the bodily fluids all over him, and
that's where he wakes up. Yeah,
and he just is looking. Because the weirdest part, I mean, like the rules in quotation marks of what a cat person is you are born a cat person because in the opening you see this almost bestiality of a woman in the spirit realm or wherever the hell this is.
Yeah, that opening is so sick though, with the David Bowie Cat People song and like the slow zoom on the red sand desert revealing the skeletons of the sacrifices, and
it is good. That. And
it's like sci-fi planet shit.
The panther goes up to her and embraces her, and you know what's going on. So the rule is, you as a cat person, anytime you have sex in your human form, you will turn into a cat, and then the only way to come back is to kill somebody, unless you have sex with your sister, and then it's totally cool, totally fine. And that is the rules that they know that have been handed down through generations? ? I guess.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And that's Paul Schrader, baby. It's just such a wild idea to have that be the crux of your film, and it's never really it's never expressed that clearly until like sort of the end, and then it is pretty clear, and that's what John Hurd kind of learns and what he has to do. But it is sort of this. It's this weird tension of like, because that's the thing, is you're talking about the sexual politics, like so incest is good ? Because that's where you're at. Like that's the only quote unquote safe sex in this film.
It's like sometimes incest is the only answer. I don't know what to tell you.
It is a wild fucking ride.
You can tell that Schrader, just as, again, from his sort of like, I guess it's our first time talking about, I think, Paul Schrader's directing as well on this show. So for anyone who's unfamiliar, that dude grew up a hardcore repressed Midwest Calvinist.
You can tell.
So yes, so the idea of him being able to kind of explore sort of repression and taboo, kind of like through his movies, is definitely something that was interested in. I think it was what drew him to this material, and at some point we're going to talk about like hardcore, for example, but like that to me is some of the best expression of that, because it's literally a movie about his dad, where like George C. Scott literally plays his dad as a character who's hunting down his daughter who ran to LA to get into the underground porn scene. So basically he moves from literally like the Midwest kind of repressed family life attitude, and then has that dude go into sort of like the gutter, literally breaking through like the gutter filth movie houses that he personally escaped to when he left home, and obviously where his own career eventually got started. I think that these kinds of movies were definitely the kinds of movies that he was like, wow, my family would never have let me do something like this. And you can kind of feel him reveling in like the, in that sense of kind of like taboo and kind of pushing people. And it doesn't matter to him that the script kind of does these strange lurches in like the narrative, and sometimes a scene will just end and you're like, what?
Maybe we really need to question Alan Ormsby over here.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Cat People is not the movie you bring your mom to the premiere to. You know what I mean?
No.
or even the woman you're seeing. Like, you're going alone to the Cat People premiere. I think.
I think so.
Yeah, but I do love the way that they found this original kind of story, which has this kind of like an intriguing sort of monster romance aspect to it, and they were just like, yeah, let's just up the sex, the bare skin, the yearning eyes framed in these like
the
beautiful
80s,
neon
baby.
pulsing synth tracks, and then we'll just. The score's great.
The score cannot be talked about enough. I think it's so perfect, and I think it really underlines all the themes and just the Bowie bit. That's like a top 10 Bowie song somehow. You know what I mean? At least for me. And
for a movie, I was shocked because I had heard that song before. I didn't. I put on the movie. I was like, I wonder. David Bowie did the music. It's called Cat People. Like this is. And I was like, oh, he literally did it for the movie.
Right.
Duh.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that just that alone, and just it plays into that 80s horror. It's not my favorite 80s horror movie by any stretch, but it's got all those benchmarks that I like in 80s horror. You know what I mean? Like obviously your synth score, obviously your intense gore when it's needed, and the sexual angle to it as well. It all kind of plays into all this stuff. But again, when you're sort of parsing your way through it, you're like, well, then why did it not exactly get there? That's what I love going back to this movie for. Is like it's kind of a puzzling oddity.
Yeah, I felt that way. Like when it ended, I did feel like I wanted to revisit it, but I still felt like I wasn't going to fully comprehend what it was trying to say. There's something, like I said before, there's just something really strange about it thematically, what it's saying about sexuality and stuff. I think it gets a little muddy and confusing. But but with Schrader just giving it his all with his visuals, the way that he paces like erotic moments, or even choosing to like that one scene where the rain is just dripping on her and she's like naked and all that. It's just only Paul Schrader could come up with these like perverted but yet beautiful images that make you confused, make you like intrigued. There's just a lot of mystery behind this, both in the film itself, but the themes that I just don't quite. I haven't wrapped my head around completely yet.
I mean, I think that ending the movie, the ending is really powerful. Obviously, he has sex with her one more time, and he ties her up first in the most erotic way, with a Q, erotic way possible, and then obviously it ends with her in a cage, and it's this sort of weird. Being petted and fed, and it's like this weird. I mean, it's obviously a statement on like monogamy and commitment, and sort of like what it is specifically for a woman and a woman's sexuality to be kind of contained by a man, and that's powerful. But
they've weirdly found a way to make their relationship work, but it works with her behind bars. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
but and again, like it is a question mark too. You know what I mean? Like it is powerful. It's really interesting, but it sort of wasn't what the movie was about the entire time. But it is, it's still a powerful way to end it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's just it. I think they caught themselves in like we've changed enough that we're modern. Not doing the original film, but at the same time we're trying to hit on a lot of those same themes, and there does kind of I feel like honestly this movie has a slightly more interesting ending than the original film if it was doing the same things that the original film was doing.
Right.
But because of the Malcolm McDowell character, which I think is again it's a very great inclusion for this movie as a very stylish set piece machine, because McDowell really leans into the thorniness of the material that he's doing, and the way that he just gets naked and wild on screen, and the way that his eyes move, the way that he's so impulsive, and he does those cat maneuvers, which they do by like having him jump but playing the footage backwards, which is how you get that kind of grace to them.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
There's a lot of really cool stylish trickery to it, and I think it makes the film a very entertaining watch. But at the same time, I think they do have to sacrifice some of the ideas in order to kind of like make that happen. But that's just it. It's like if you're interested in the film because you want to see these very fun, gruesome, hallucinatory, vulgar surfaces, this film offers all of that to you and more for 2 full hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd been watching this, right after, because I did go back and revisit the original too. I found myself just being like, man, that movie is just so graceful and filled with atmosphere, and it's the opposite of kind of being plotty in the way that this is, the way that it has to kind of explain itself to you because it's making so many strange changes, including the incestuous aspect and other things like that. But yeah, Paul, I think he does. I think they had the kind of like the right idea in terms of the style on what they were going to do, even if this is once again nothing like the actual transcendental style cinema that he loves. This is actually the most diametrically opposed to his kind of style that he likes to do. Because I don't know if have you read that, Stephen, his book?
No, I'm not.
Because his whole thing is he loves like Ozu and Bresson. He loves this idea of a transcendental cinema, a movie that gives you moments to think and breathe through the images that you're watching and doesn't explain itself to you. And think of First Reformed was kind of like a kind of like, to him that was him finally achieving what he had always tried to write about in his own film criticism, because he started out as a film critic. Which is why that he's a guy who thinks through his ideas too, which is why I think I walk into a film of his kind of hoping for more in that department. But this, he was like, that also translates to what he tries to do with his style. He tries to choose simpler shots, longer shots. He tries to choose, things that aren't as in your face, even if sometimes the content is like, I just saw his new film, The Card Counter, which has to do with obviously, a guy who committed war crimes in Iraq. And you would think that, a movie like that would, maybe lead to, like a big sequence, some sort of shootout or something, or some sort of torture sequence. And he just kind of refuses to do that. And what was so interesting is here, I don't know if he was just a younger guy, if he just bent to the material. He went as crazy as he could have with the sexuality, the luridness of it, the style of it, the colors. This was like everything that he says that he doesn't like about the way that people make movies.
But it's also, at the same time, it's kind of a big studio remake too, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is the weirdest part of this whole situation, not unlike Carpenter's The Thing. Which
sleazy prestige picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just this idea that like, oh, we want to make a horror movie and we're trying to get all of our Universal greats back out there, baby. And it's like this insane Schrader movie. So I think that's what he's also wrestling with. There's probably a lot of studio here, which is amazing that anyone is signing off on this script, period.
This seems like only
The
like
80s,
an
man.
individual project.
Even the execs were coked out.
Yeah, wild shit. This would never get greenlit nowadays.
No. And that's what makes it so sort of fascinating to watch. And I mean, like, you're right. I think a set piece machine is the right way to look at it, and just sort of and that kind of like as a series of scenes, it works a little bit better just because it's sort of, you get to just sort of live in them and like kind of watch Schrader's camera go to work. And that in and of itself, it's kind of a movie you can kind of look at your phone sometimes, you know what I mean, and come back to it. I mean, obviously, I'd love to see if this is ever played in a theater, I would go to see it just to sort of live it in the big screen. But at the same time, like, it is a movie that is just sort of a collection of really fascinating images with amazing sound and some pretty good. Yeah,
well, and the visuals are just romantic to me in a way that the writing and performances just don't get to.
Yes.
It's just it's a weird thing where I could see how you could very easily tweak some of this to like get into the feelings that the filmmaking is trying to get out of you. And when it just goes like pure cinema mode, like when it is just like some sort of set piece taking place, it's beautiful. Like that scene where she is first kind of realizing her own impulses because Malcolm McDowell gave her the fucking freaky eyes, and it was like, I want to fuck you, my sister. She goes on a little romantic journey with the zoologist for a little while. And there's an amazing sequence where she goes like night vision mode and she's like hunting a rabbit through the forest. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, and he makes all the colors
and
change. Like the surrounding area is blue, but the thing she's focusing on is like red, so she can hyper focus on it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, she can actually like see like the body heat through her vision and everything, and you get swept up into her like stalking and preying on this thing. And I was like, that is such an amazing sequence in such a visual way, and especially the music too in that.
Right.
I think the track on the score is literally called like Hunting Rabbits or something like that, or like it's very, very well done, and you just go, man, where is that in like the character scene? Like when two characters are talking about this ancient cat people and talking about their love for each other, and you're like, where is that style during that part? Like, where is the scene where you see her do that to like the guy that she loves, doing the same sort of like predator vision to that guy and getting into the perversity of wanting to hunt down this thing that you're in love with? And it's just weird that you can see how with just such small tweaks this could actually be a really great movie.
Yeah, she definitely needed to be battling with it throughout her normal life, I feel like, and instead they give that to Malcolm and make her kind of just like unravel everything very slowly until she finally gets that scene that you were talking about. It would have been nice to have some more hints proceeding up to that.
And when Malcolm McDowell does go down, it's a really great, obviously, set piece where he's literally just fighting this. It's something that's great about the original too. Actually, the absurd image of just like there's like a woman in your room and then she's a cat, and then oh shit, you're fighting a cat. And you're like, what is the logistics of fighting a cat like that? That in the original, when the cat jumps out, I still get kind of freaked out by that because I don't know what animal control was like in 1942. But when they do it in this one, there's he's like holding a chair, he's like throwing shit at the cat. You're like, how do you fight this giant cat who's in my room? And eventually the I think it's O'Toole runs in with the shotgun and like shoots him out the window, and then you get to see his bloody body on the grass and like a great image, and her like shouting into the sky, and it's very melodramatic, and it's just one of those things where like, again, you don't get so much her feelings for her brother. So like it's a thing that like if they had just developed it a little bit earlier, you would kind of understand the sort of emotional expression taking place. And then when it gets into that last like 30 minutes after the brother is dead, she's basically just recreating the set pieces from the original film. Like there's literally like the bit where she's tracking the one girl through the park. There's even the part where the train stops suddenly. Yes. But what's so weird is that, again, in the original film, it's like there's like these the branches are suddenly moving, and then the thing comes to a stop. It's like builds up in kind of intensity, and it's just this weird thing where Paul recreating the same sequences is kind of losing some of that at the same time too. Like even the pool scene, which they basically steal like image for
the
image,
shots are
which
the same.
Which is what I read, that basically him and John Bailey were basically like, we just couldn't think of a better way to do it. They were like, we think they nailed it.
This is too good.
So we just did it again.
I almost respect that. That's hilarious.
You know what? Here's the thing, Annette O'Toole. I've worked at a gym, and if you're the asshole that comes with 5 minutes before closing and it's like, I just need to get in, you deserve to be stalked by a cat. How about that?
There you go.
Because people want to go home. That's how that works.
That's right.
But I love, what's and also like the cat acting, the big cat acting, whatever. I think there are leopards that are painted to be pumas or whatever that is. It got me, and I don't know how actors do this, because any movie can turn into Roar really quickly.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. So sorry, they were cougars that had to be dyed black because real leopards apparently are like untrainable. That's right. They'll just fuck you up.
But these cougars are like John Hurd is like wrestling with this thing in certain scenes.
Yes,
dude.
The first time they capture Malcolm McDowell in that flop house or whatever is like an incredible sequence of like big cat acting, and like he gets into it with it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love too when they find Malcolm McDowell's like layer of bodies and just gore everywhere. They were like, I guess your brother was a serial killer this whole time. Then she's like, oh, okay, well that's good to know, I guess. But then and then obviously the way that relates to kind of like the zoo stuff, I liked the idea of her like being someone who gets to work in like the zoo gift shop and stuff like that. There's a couple little changes in there that are kind of nice, but again, it's just it's just the writing for the two main performances between Kinski and Hurd, it's definitely not as thorough and not as interesting, even though, again, there's some neat ideas.
Especially when you have Malcolm, because his plot point is just so interesting. Every time they went back to Malcolm, I was like just enthralled. I really enjoyed his struggle.
She's hunting O'Toole because she for sexual jealousy of John Hurd, or is that some implied bisexuality?
I think it's supposed to be something to do with the fact that they are both competing for Hurd, but then you are kind of left to wonder, like, both of these women want this guy? Okay.
Yeah. He does.
Like, he's such a dick to O'Toole.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't play it as like a heart stopper. So the fact that you have two of these just absolutely gorgeous women fighting over him does feel a little strange.
He settles for a 1982 Annette O'Toole. Are you fucking kidding me?
That's a settle. That's a settle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Come on.
I guess so.
Oh man.
Yeah. But you know what? He holds his own against the cat. So he's got some strength. He takes her on a nice trip out to nature, where they have a good time out there. And I do love the eventual sort of climactic sex scenes. But again, the sex scenes are filmed so much more interesting. You wish the character work was like as strong in them. But like, man, when they eventually, there's like this crazy, like sort of like 180 pan over his body as he like mounts her, and as he like fucking starts like tying and like doing the BDSM and things like that as well, because he's like, I'm gonna have sex with you, but you're gonna turn into a cat, and I want you restrained when you turn into a cat. and you understand at that point on a plot level what's happening, but like the way that it's done, again, it's so like sensually done and so just strange, and that you do get into that stuff. And again, the crazy synth score playing while he's doing that kind of stuff is wonderful as well. So like, again, as a series of like weirdly erotic horror set pieces, this movie does really, really work. And I mean, again, it's not just them, him tying her up. I think my favorite bit is the full body horror transformation that she does. You see like her claws rip out of her hands, and her face pops off to reveal the leopard. Her spine is like opening up, and you see like the fangs come in and the claws coming through the sheets.
It reminded me of Werewolf in London a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really good. Very good.
That, but in like the middle of a sex scene.
Yes.
Well, Werewolf in London, it's painful, right? Like the guy is screaming the whole time, and it's like this kind of like, you feel the heat and all that stuff that he's going through. But here, it's like, it is like my true self coming out kind of a thing, right? It's me shedding this outer layer quite easily, even though it's like horrific looking and gel induced, but it is very, it is quite easy for her to slink out of it in a sex horror way. And it's saying a lot, and it's just saying a whole, and I mean, that's the transgressions of this movie I find really fascinating. All the buttons it's pushing, the BDSM, the incest, the sort of patriarchy stuff that we're kind of toying with, et cetera, et cetera. Right. It's just, this movie could have been Basic Instinct, a huge erotic hit, and it just isn't.
Too weird for people, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, a little bit for me is that it's just, I think it's just confused and overlong, which is just like qualities you don't like to see combined together. Like if you're one of those things, I feel like there's forgiveness a lot of the time, especially for me.
Luckily, Schrader
I can
really
deal with a movie I don't wholly understand, but I love the vibes, or a movie that does overstays its welcome, but like it rocks the whole time. And this movie just kind of has just both of those qualities in a way that I don't quite love, even though, again, I really couldn't take my eyes off it watching it the first time.
That's the thing. It's gorgeous. Through and through.
Yeah.
Can't take that away from Paul ever.
And you can feel every minute of the 2 hours, though. That is kind of that is a real slight to the film.
Yeah, about halfway through, I was kind of like, I get it. and we can get to the craziness now. So yeah, especially having the original movie be 75 minutes. I mean, adding an entire 45 minutes of plotting can really slow a film down. So, but luckily we still got
and then
wild,
also that
self in
plotting
there, so.
being the reason you're kind of confused about what the movie's about too is the kind of the issue
Doesn't
too.
help.
You're kind of like, oh, okay, so she's got a brother. They're both in the brother is dead, but he's in the spirit realm now, and now she is comfortable with her family and the cat, and now she can
And
have
incest.
sex but not turn into a cat, but then she still does, and
Yeah.
so,
The
there was
wild
a
one.
little bit of part for me where I was like, I might need someone to walk me through what exactly they were doing in the writing on
me
some
too.
of it. But all the psychedelic style of it, I was definitely feeling it. So I got to give them props there for sure.
Yep, I'm right there.
And then,
with you.
it all leads to that very interesting ending that kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere, but is interesting. And you can tell that they kind of had the way they were going to shoot it planned out in advance, because Paul loves, I don't know why this is his thing, but he loves playing with freeze frame endings.
Yeah.
And
This was a cool one.
he does. Yeah, this was a cool one because it obviously he has sex with her, BDSM sex with her, and turns her back into the leopard, which then he cages and puts in the zoo, and she's going to live the rest of her life there. And he feeds her and he pets her, and she actually does become kind of like docile to him in a way, like she's controlled. And then it freeze frames on that, and then it starts bringing the cat people song right back in, and then. In time to queue up with David Bowie being like, with gasoline.
Yeah, the drop.
The drop hits and the freeze frame ends and the footage starts again, and the leopard is just fucking growling and
then
just
another freeze
fangs
frame.
out making the noise, and then it re-freeze frames and continues going, which is just like such a sort of like well conceived kind of bit of ambiguity that the film previously didn't have, which is like, what is their relationship like? Can you really control
the animal's
something
still inside
like this
kind of thing.
But and I'm sorry, and not to be lost though is the dumpiness of the New Orleans Zoo here, because it's not like it's not a huge enclosure with trees and shit.
Right.
She's in a
you feel bad for those
8x10
animals.
cell. It is a prison cell, like full on through and through, which is horrible for animal rights people. But
the only animal
it's
that looks
not like this enclosure recreating her environment or anything.
No.
the only animal that looks like he's having a decent time is the chimpanzee watching television in his cage. And
Yeah, dude,
that's
he's
about
watching
it.
his soaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Catching up. Yep.
that rules.
I did love some
That's
of
from
the small
another movie
detail
for sure.
personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's also part of it, right? It's not even just a zoo; it's a fucking jail. You know what I mean? Which is really something.
Exactly.
Yeah. And very interesting once again to see Paul doing his freeze frame thing, because I've seen enough of his movies now to be like, man, he really loves doing that. Because I recently watched Light Sleeper. Have you guys seen Light Sleeper?
I keep
really good.
meaning to watch it.
Because that has a freeze frame, which I won't spoil, but there was something really amazing about it, which was that it's a freeze frame and your mind goes, oh, okay, that's a freeze frame. And then about 10 seconds later, you realize that it was not a freeze frame. And actually the entire credits are a shot that he made the actors hold, because you can actually see them slightly move.
That's so sick.
Yeah, so it's not a freeze frame, and it's actually kind of powerful because it's a romantic moment, so it's kind of like the actors get to keep living that romantic moment for like the length that they will hold still. So it's kind of nice, and also, not to spoil it, but he does it again in the card counter. So I don't know what his fucking deal is with this, but he really loves this idea of freezing a moment in time that's like saying something very, very specific, this kind of feeling that you're capturing. And in this one, you're left with appropriately ambiguous kind of ending that left me feeling like, okay, that was a solid ending. Although it did leave me wondering how much ketamine they needed to get that leopard to do what it was to perform the way that it was performing.
Is that what they use?
I'm guessing.
Something strong for sure, man, because these are big motherfucking cats.
Yeah, dude.
And they're performing. Like,
Yeah,
they
they
are
are.
doing crazy movements and shit.
Some of the timing was pretty wild. Yeah.
The autopsy
Yeah.
with Heard and that, I mean, it seems like that's you want to talk about ketamine, an asleep cougar or whatever the hell they're using.
Yeah, it looks
because
real.
it's definitely not a fucking puppet, and he's like touching it and moving around,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
Right. That is
There's
a
this
great
great-
body horror sequence too, just to briefly say.
Oh, yes.
When it melts and then the arm
Oh,
comes
yes.
out, the green slime. I'd really like that.
Oh, I almost forgot about when he's trying to do the autopsy on it, right?
Yeah, Malcolm's
on
body
McDowell.
just melts completely.
On Malcolm. Yeah.
it's such a cool idea.
Gross.
But I mean, like, it's that there's this great Mitchell and Webb sketch where I think it's Robert Webb keeps going up to really dangerous activities like bungee jumping without a bungee cord or whatever, but he keeps going to David Mitchell like, but it's totally safe, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's fine, and like the bit is like it's entirely not safe, which I feel like that's being on a movie set with a big cat. It's like, oh, so he's just down, right? I can just grab his face. Oh yeah, it's fine. It's like, I don't know, man, that thing can change in an instant.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that will wrap it up for Cat People. We're going to enter, I think, the reductive rating right here, which for you, Steve, is where we remove all the words, all the nuance, and give the movie a rating between 1 and 5. But it's also turned into kind of like closing statements or any scenes that we didn't hit that we forgot to bring up. But for me, this gets a very high 3 for me, I think. I thought about the 4 on it because I did really enjoy it, but I did at a certain point realize that a lot of my enjoyment of it was a very surface enjoyment, that this is a very gruesome and vulgar and erotic retelling of a sort of like more graceful and economical horror film. And I began to just realize that I got more out of the ideas in the original version of this film than I did in this film. But that being said, again, this is, it's really unbelievable to look at, both because, the actors are as bare skin as possible, all the time, lit with beautiful neon and pulsing synth everywhere, but also, again, the amount of sort of like a horror sequencing that he came up with for this, I think was, really well realized. A lot of the sort of the predatory qualities, the stalking qualities, some of the paranoid atmosphere of it. It's very sleazy and stylish in the kind of ways that we like to talk about on this show, especially. But I think if we're going to talk about, honestly, 80s horror movies, sort of about a female sex object horror, I do think I might land more on the side of Tobe Hooper's Life Force on this one. A movie where Matilda May literally kickstarts the apocalypse because everyone is just too damn horny.
And I get it.
And just watching, like vampire space succubus just like suck the life force out of people. Like, I think they made the right choice making her appropriately, have to deal with the fact that she's the one dealing out the destruction. And I think this movie does lose something and it kind of fails Kinski by, I think that she's good, but I think that she's not given as interesting of material as she could have been given. And the few moments where she is given it and she gets to turn Huntress, which is really only for kind of like 15 minutes of the movie, really. She's commanding the way that she leads John Hurt around, the way that, when she gets to do the body horror sequencing and transform, when she gets to hunt that rabbit down in this sort of psychedelic synth sequence, it's in those moments, she's really good. And in the moments where she has to be where Malcolm McDowell gets to be amazing and she just has to be scared and kind of and confused. and then John Hurd gets to be just kind of like this average looking dude who steals her heart. It's just in that stuff, it's just not quite as interesting. And I think that that's a fault of, probably the 3 or 4 different drafts they did of this. I know that Roger Vadim, who did Barbarella, did a draft, or who was hired at one point. I know that Bob Clark, who did Black Christmas, was involved in the draft at one point. It just seems like there's a lot of people kind of had different ideas, and they kind of threw them together and kind of hoped they could get out of it what they got. And, for a studio mess, this is one of the more beautiful, entertaining messes that you can watch.
Definitely.
So high 3.
Yeah, for me, it's also, I think that high 3, I think it's just like visually, this is incredible. I could just watch this on mute and enjoy it. But I will say, just thematically, it is very confusing. I found by the end, I wasn't quite sure what they were saying about sexuality or anything like that. I did miss a little bit of the mystery that the older one has, the 42 version. But I will say it was endlessly intriguing to watch Paul Schrader become more and more in love with the lead actress. Like I already mentioned that one shot, but the camera being led by her is just, you know that he conceptualized that bad boy. Oh yeah. Like he was like, I need one shot where she leads me into the bed. I just have to have it. It's just so Schrader. But yeah,
and she's the daughter, right, of Klaus Kinski.
Is it?
I didn't look that up, but I kind of assumed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
and,
that's
because we've talked about him before on The Great Silence, obviously, where he is just so villainous in his look. And there were a couple times where she kind of had that face, and I was like, man, give her more villainous shit to do.
That's the thing. I agree with you where they needed to give her more just more scenes to chew on, because it's you give everything to Malcolm, which, don't get me wrong, I love all Malcolm's scenes. I just think that there should have been a balance there, so that when she starts to transform, we feel it a little more, and it doesn't feel so just sudden. But yeah, I think this is still
he's
good.
the he was the Nosferatu in Herzog's version of Nosferatu from 79, just a couple years earlier too, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, man, they really could have just got like the female Klaus Kinski, and they could have really got that performance if they made her as monstrous as he gets to perform being sometimes.
Yeah. It felt like they didn't want to quite, I guess, touch the politics a little bit until but they still kind of do in the end. So that's what's weird, that they hold off for so long before they start giving it to you. But I don't know. I would give this the high 3. I am going to rewatch it and revisit it. It's intriguing to me. I just don't know if it'll ever get to that 4, because thematically I'm pretty confused about what it's trying to say. So we'll see. But really good regardless.
Awesome. Yeah, I would go high 3 as well. Probably if it's not a cup, out of 3.5, as you do on Letterboxd, at least, because it does. I mean, I think intriguing is the right word, because there's just so much here, and that's what kind of a messy movie like this does, at least, because the dots don't connect quite as well. You can kind of scratch it at the roof of your mouth like a canker sore a little bit, and be like, what is that? And like it kind of gets in your head a little bit, in a good way, I think. I mean, like, I would be wary of anyone that gives this movie a 5 anyway. You know what I mean? If somebody's like, finally, they're saying it, man. Like, what are they saying?
Check the basement.
Exactly. I would be a little wary of a 5er here. I just think that, like, there's
Roger
so much
Ebert almost gave it the 5.
Exactly.
It should be worth noting.
Which is odd for Raj, because can be puritanical, and like this is totally not that. It's just, but there's just so much to look at and enjoy. It's a fun trip to take, even if, you know what I mean, there are some pitfalls in it, and it doesn't. The New Orleans stuff is really nice to look at for sure. I mean, all the cityscape stuff, you really get to see it, especially as that city has changed significantly. It's a nice moment in time in the early '80s for New Orleans. There's
definitely the most horny anyone in New Orleans has ever been depicted on screen,
which is saying something.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, like, the spirit realm stuff, I think it's one of the more beautiful, like, I want Doom.
Yeah, we
to
didn't
look
even
like
mention that a lot. That stuff was beautiful, with like the big tree, like the matte painting work that they did with the sand and the lighting and everything. It's
Love the
beautiful.
shot of all the panthers just sitting on the tree in the orange background. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You almost want the movie to end there somehow, or like maybe like John Hurt has to go there and fight McDowell in the fucking spirit realm, some horrible ending. But like because it's just so beautiful and so specific to this movie that I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, really, I'm not. It's one of the more beautiful, like, kind of call it space space planety stuff that I've seen.
Yeah, it's got a very
and
mystical myth feel to it that I like.
Exactly, and this movie writes a big check, and it does almost cashes it. And McDowell's fantastic, and Kinski's good, and Heard's Heard. It's definitely not my last time seeing this movie for sure, but it'll definitely be in a couple of years for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think that will wrap it up for Cat People. We are going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about The Hidden.
Try for one on the tire. You think this is easy? Why don't you try? Bye.
I guess a career in the police didn't really prepare you for this, did it?
The Hidden.
You think it's over now? You're wrong.
All right, we are back, and we are talking The Hidden, the 1987 American science fiction horror film directed by Jack Shoulder and starring Kyle MacLachlan, Michael Nuri in the lead role, and I was also glad to see Chris Mulkey make a kind of short-lived cameo, but it was awesome to see him and Kyle, who obviously both went on to be in Twin Peaks, kind of both doing something together here. And this movie is fucking crazy.
Crazy. Did you hear? I want to just say this. What did you guys like the first time you saw this? If Josh, is this the first time you saw this?
This was my first time watching.
Okay.
When Steven gave it to me, I was like, "Oh, what is this? This looks cool."
Yeah, and I went in completely blank, so I didn't even know.
I didn't read anyone on it. Yeah,
and it was just every little surprise was just such a treat. I was watching it with my buddy Joel because I'm staying there right now, and he was just endlessly going, "What the fuck? What the fuck?" Like just, after every little twist was revealed, it was so much fun. I had a blast with it.
I will say for listeners who are uninitiated, just stop right now and watch The Hidden and then come back, because it that's the experience. Because again, I was just waiting for a stream to start, and it was like, here's a cool movie, The Hidden, and I was like, I have no idea what this movie is. I was like, ooh, Kyle MacLachlan, I'm in, and it is so fucking wild, especially the Chris Mulkey beginning. You're like, what in the fuck am I watching? And usually movies
pedal
like that,
to the metal, literally, like in the first minute of the movie.
And I mean, the movie actually doesn't fall off a cliff after that, because usually you're shooting yourself in the foot when you do something like that, right? Like this huge opening set piece. It's like, okay,
doing the kind of set piece that you can't top. Yeah.
Yes, but no, it goes and it goes, and it keeps going.
Yeah, the energy.
Yeah,
is
and I love too that it has. Yeah, it has a very propulsive pace to it. It's actually, what's so interesting is we were just kind of complaining a little bit anyway that, Schrader's Cat People kind of turns into a set piece machine. And that's because I think the movie flirts with being an idea movie.
Yes.
Right.
This movie is a full-on set piece machine. And the few ideas that kind of come up in the periphery and the subtext are just kind of like, you're like, nice. They just added a little bit of extra quality to you. But for the most part, this movie just really wants to get you engaged in the sequences. And you know that right off the bat when it opens on just like this very like sort of mournful, ominous synth over this sort of security camera footage. And it's holding just, these civilians hanging out in a bank, and you're kind of like, I wonder, like kind of what's going on here. You see one dude pull up and just stand in the middle, and you're kind of like, oh, what's that guy doing? And that's the kind of sort of thought process this film gets you in, where it's like, it slowly doles out information over the course of the movie, but its favorite trick is to just drop you into something absurd and just have you react to that. And when that dude in the security cam footage just pulled out a shotgun and started massacring people, smiling at the camera and blasting the camera lens and walking out the front into his Ferrari, where he just goes Grand Theft Auto mode and starts
plays heavy metal,
everything, blasting metal, running from the cops. Incredible like dollies and POV shots like attached to the car's hoods and tires as he's like running over a dude in a wheelchair.
Oh my
and
God.
The dude's like smashing into like
that's when me and my buddy knew we found a gem. When he hit the guy in the wheelchair, I was like, this is gonna be a good movie.
That is when that's like the movie, like that's the opening statement of the movie. Is like, you will believe we will run a man over in a wheelchair. It's like, I believe it,
90 seconds into the movie.
And I mean, like this. That's the cool. And there's no sci-fi. It's not like even The Thing, which this movie obviously has seen. You know what I mean? Like we know. You have that first shot of like you see space, and like you're letting the audience know that this is some kind of science fiction film. Right. You have no idea. I mean, again, obviously, if you're in the theater, you probably read the description, but like. You have no idea what this movie is when you just sort of find it, and it doesn't seem sci-fi until it is. But you do find out that this alien loves to rock, and I love that detail about this alien because it gives you so much diegetic music that just fucking rules.
Well, that's something I wanted to say in this first chase sequence here. I love the way that they only show you or let you listen to the metal when you're inside the car with him. So it'll go from metal when he's just rocking and whatever, and then as soon as it's outside and they're like spinning around a corner or something, it's just the screeches of the car, and then it shoots you back into the metal sequence. So it's just you keep like going in and out of the alien's headspace a little bit. It's just like that high energy octane craziness, and then. Like what's happening on the outside of that.
Oh yeah, and the Hollywood location work is fucking sick.
Oh my god, it's so good.
As he's driving around, like running people over and getting blood all over his windshield, just vibing out. And the emphasis in the sequence is purely on just like the destruction. It's the shotgun blast. It's the windshield shattering. It's the black smoke of the car that's just exploded as they, do this kind of, they do this maneuver to try to trap him that he kind of just drives right through, and they keep shooting at him, but like, nothing is stopping him.
And I
Short
love
of literally the car exploding and throwing him, they shoot shotguns directly into his chest that don't do anything to him. Like this dude is like full on like Terminator mode. And I love that because you're dropped into sort of just the absurd confusion of like the ways obviously that these cops would be reacting to seeing what they're seeing, and the way that it builds in like sort of like very short, second long images of just like the intensity building as he's slowly approaching, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? And like, it's really, really well done, very sturdily done action, but also just really well doled out like suspense sequencing and stuff like that as well. And literally it drops you into this and you're just like, holy fuck, what's going on? And like it's such a fuck you opening.
And all the carnage is a perfect introduction to what's to come, because I love that they've basically designed this alien to just take on a barrage of bullets before it has to transfer to another body. So it just gives the movie an automatic excuse to be as crazy as possible. There's just so many squib work and like bodies exploding and just craziness like that. And do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of one of our favorite moments that we had when we were watching a movie for this show, which was watching this movie called Dead Heat, which any longtime listeners might remember. And there's an incredible thing that I will never forget in that movie, where the premise is obviously is that it's these cops who find this buddy cop film that these like literally it's a brother of Shane Black script. It's literally a Shane Black movie, but like the two guys find themselves in kind of like a reanimated sort of zombie conspiracy movie. And at one point, a dude. At this point, he is a zombie cop. Yes.
He finds another zombie henchman, and they both like unload assault rifles into each other. And you're just watching two zombies shred each other, gore everywhere, squibs everywhere,
and because they can't
both
die.
of them are still standing.
They can't die, so it's just two guys with Uzis going at each other for like
just
5
literally
minutes.
shooting into each other.
It's fucking
unlimited
amazing.
Bullets.
And
It's
that's
one of
the
my
tone
favorite.
that this has.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite, like, sort of like 80s action meets, cross genre kind of stuff that's taking place in that film. And I will never forget watching that scene. And this is the only movie I've seen since that gave me that same kind of reaction on
Agreed.
like where it's like it's doing something that's kind of Body Snatchers-esque, as Jamie kind of hinted at with the alien stuff. It's doing some of the sort of like lean action sequencing of it, where you're kind of dealing with this unstoppable force, reminds you of something like like Terminator. But I also thought of like, what's that Dolph Lundgren movie where he's
I Come in Peace.
chasing the alien down?
Yes.
I Come in Peace, where the alien shoots like CDs.
Yes.
With Kyle in it, and the way that it's kind of done as this procedural, it reminded me a little bit of something almost like X-Files.
Yeah.
Like it's got a little bit of like something like Carpenter's They Live in it, and the fact that I can compare it to like all of these different things at the same time, and it never like lives any of this stuff down. It's got a little bit of fantastic.
And it's kind of got the ending. Not to spoil it, we'll get to there. It's kind of got the end of the Dead Zone, and I hate this expression on steroids because it kind of it does. It goes there. I think that and you're right, Josh, when you compare this to Grand Theft Auto, because I kind of think the movie doesn't explore this that much because it wasn't really it wasn't a thing then, but it is. That's what the alien's doing. The alien is literally just playing Grand Theft Auto. Like, he's like, I'm just going to get in this body. I don't care. Exactly. I don't care. I'm going to get a bunch of money. I'm going to run over a bunch of people. And when I die, I'm going to fucking respawn. So it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, there's no consequence for me.
That's what I was saying when I said that, like, again, this is like a very effectively made set piece machine, but there are some things on the periphery. And I did pick up kind of like a satirical thread there from the alien where, you know, this body snatching alien comes to Earth as like, you know, this pure destructive force in the filmmaking, but it's a destructive force of like very American consumption.
Yes.
It's literally just overdosing on American culture. It's the fast cars, loud music, cheap sex, shiny clothes. It's like, I can't get enough. I can't get it all. And
this
basically
alien
anytime
is partying, man.
Yeah, he's robbing record stores to get, you know, some of his favorite 80s metal, hair metal specifically.
Yeah, like up until the murder, I was cheering for the alien in a way. I'm like, this guy knows how to party, bro.
Oh, that scene where he walks up to and again, the way that they, you know, again, sequence this out, I think is part of the genius of it. But like when the alien goes there to go just steal a Ferrari, like you would think that would be a scene where he would just walk in, he would steal the Ferrari. Yeah. But no, it's this long drawn out thing where he's like, I want this car. And like this coked out dude who's trying to buy the Ferrari is like, nah, dude, that's my fucking car. Don't touch that car. And then he's doing cocaine out of a little miniature model car that's sitting on the Ferrari car dealer's desk. And he walks in, he gets the keys, and after getting the keys, he just blasts these two dudes away. And again, it's a scene where like it's really only adds like 60 seconds to the movie, but you're like, that choice to really be like, no, this alien wants to cause destruction. This alien is attracted to the shiny things, and we want you to fully get, you know, invested in that. And I think that kind of stuff is what ended up, you know, taking the movie to the next level for me, especially. And while you're watching, again, most of the stuff that he's doing is being turned into sort of like set piece sequencing. Like when you see the first transfer from body to body, which is like straight up fucking Cronenberg shit. Yes. It's horrifying. It's like this stop motion slimy slug animation where it goes out of. I don't know what it was.
It looks so good.
It does. I don't know if that's what that is because it's so close to human flesh. It's probably one of the better dummies, or maybe like they filmed it where it's not a dummy until it is, and maybe that transfer is really quick and easy. But it's
the Stuart Gordon.
It was fantastic.
School of getting that shit done. Yeah, no, but it looks incredible when his mouth just opens wide and this big ass slug alien just, you know, comes out of the one dude's mouth and goes into the other dude's mouth. And, you know, it's how it's how the monster changes bodies, like body horror style. And again, it opens that up to you in like the first like 10 or 15 minutes. And you're still kind of unsure what this movie is about at that point.
And it's not.
You're even more confused.
What I love is all of the great performances by the people who are the alien. Like it's not like something
yes, like they're so good.
It's not like that movie Fallen where it's like, oh, anybody could be the alien. Like no, that alien acts a really specific way, and you know who the alien is immediately, and it's so big. Like Mulkey's fantastic. The next guy who gets it is this dude, William Boyette. He's the heavy guy who is my favorite. This is the guy that goes into the record store and beats the dude to death, and it's just like he wants to party, he wants to fuck, he wants to have a great time, and you can see it all over this dumb alien's face.
Yeah, and I also like, speaking of like how they act. I did like the way that Kyle MacLachlan is acting as those aliens, because it ends up being revealed that he is one in a sense. He's kind of like hunting the one down.
I love how subtle that reveal is, though, because in the early scenes when he first shows up as the FBI agent, he's just an FBI agent, and he's a little socially awkward. Like he takes a little bit too long to reply in a way that shows that he's not like this kind of the alpha cop that Michael Nouri is playing, Tom Beck. Kyle's Lloyd Gallagher, the FBI agent, is very again, he's not as like flat as the actual the performers who have to play like the destructive alien. You can immediately recognize that there's something incredibly inhuman in a way, and it feels like they stole that for the premise of Men in Black.
A little bit, for sure.
The whole I'm walking around and I'm wearing a body as a skin suit kind of a thing.
Like that's the kind of way that he delivers the performance. And then for Kyle, it's very just like, again, just very subtle social awkwardness and like weird choices of wording and, just things that you wouldn't pick up on as, oh, that guy's an alien. So by the time it's revealed that he's an alien, I was like a little like, oh.
It is. And watching it the second time, you see it the whole time. Like, oh yeah, he's obviously an alien. And like, why does he have the Ferrari and all this stuff? Like, but it's the late 80s. It's a buddy cop movie. You've got your swinging dick detective and your stuffed shirt FBI
I don't
agent.
do traffic tickets.
Exactly. And you're like, I know what this movie is until you don't know what this movie is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a great quality. Like that's something I feel like more movies need to be doing, which is just like dropping you into this, crazy situation that they've clearly planned in advance and just not feeling the need to explain yourself. Just like dropping you into a set piece and being comfortable with like, the audience is going to be saying what the fuck for like an hour at least. But that is an extremely, rewarding quality by the time you do get to the even more absurd craziness of you now seeing the set pieces and understanding. And honestly, it helps you get involved in the character experience, because by the time that Michael Nouri, who plays the sort of a straight guy detective to Kyle's more, sci-fi FBI agent, by the time that Michael Nouri completely catches up with him and he knows what's happening and he believes what's happening, God, that moment is great.
Yes.
It's during that police station shootout, and there's this part where both of them walking side by side, an alien and a human have just become official partners in this mission. And it's literally just like this great sort of like a bum-de-bum-ba-bum kind of score going as they both walk down the hallway through where the alien just shot a fucking rocket launcher through the police station.
I love the way...
And these two are just connected by it. It's great.
I love the way that they had them walk as well, because it has Gallagher, who's like the alien that has this stuff figured out. He starts walking towards him, and then Beck starts to join him, which I just like that visual representation of like, okay, I'm on board and let's fucking take down these aliens.
And he gives him his silly laser gun too. Like he really believes at this point. And also, by the way, the movie's almost over at that point. Like we've had,
that's what's crazy. There's so much of this movie is like the mysterious quality, the element of like all the various set pieces as it changes bodies. Because you said that it changed into the one guy who grabs the Ferrari, but then it changes into the stripper at the strip club. I thought she was great too.
She's really good, and it's so awesome to watch her, like, because she's still in like the stripper getup and everything, and just to have her with like her powerful assault rifles and huge ass shotguns that she just starts blowing people away with. It's quite an image.
Yeah, and it was Claudia Christian, who I read was in Babylon 5, which apparently I haven't seen that, but I've heard of that. And apparently this was like a big reason was that, she was like, I've done sci-fi. Look at this.
I honestly feel like not that I'm going to sci-fi conventions, but if I did, I would be the one guy I'd be like, I have no idea what Babylon 5 is, but the hidden rules. You, sir.
Can you sign my poster of the hidden?
Because and that's what's so great about the movie is it does sort of change every time the alien changes. You know what I mean? Like it moves with that. It's like
when it becomes a dog.
Yeah, the dog is fantastic.
The dog reveal it literally had me laughing
Yes.
like a maniac. That shot of the dog looking just very ominously in the mirror. And I was like, this dog is giving one of the best performances as the alien
The
that I've
action
seen.
set piece with the dog, very short-lived but amazing, where he literally jumps through the fucking window, tackles the guy into the refrigerator, knocks him out, and then takes over his body. It's just like, what am I watching? What am I watching right now? It's fantastic.
It's really set piece after set piece. There's some we get. I mean, it's so funny that Michael Nouri turned down, at least if you believe him, turned down the Martin Riggs character for this in Lethal Weapon. I believe they're the same year, and there's a lot of similarities. Like he goes back, he gets brought. Kyle MacLachlan gets brought to his family, has to meet that, and looks. He's lost his own family, and is feeling all that stuff. But again, alien.
He's still kind of weird and alien-like about it. Yeah.
Yes. The dinner scene is the most nanu he gets, where he's like he doesn't know how to hold forks, and he's sort of shoving food into his mouth. It's really something.
He name drops a star that he's from, in that scene at one point. It's it's like the first hints that you start to get that this guy is not all there, but you think he's just kind of weird. You're not 100% certain, and especially too when he's just you have a very special kid or whatever, and the mother is thank you, and he's just he's like, you love her, and I love Michael Nouri's response, which is just she's our daughter.
It is, we love our daughter.
We love her. Yes.
I think Kyle MacLachlan is really, really good in this. It's a weird, and just to think that he did Dune, Blue Velvet, and then this is kind of a that dude was on fire in the mid 80s, man. He had it, and it's really easy to do this poorly, I think. You know what I mean? But when he's talking about his dead family, you do sort of feel something which actually matters for the ending of the movie, which is also insane.
Yep. It predates that kind of sort of a surreal kind of cop movie kind of performance that he eventually does give, and especially the later Twin Peaks stuff as well.
Yes.
Which is crazy. I was watching this thinking man, I'm so used to Kyle MacLachlan, and he, especially in the return for Twin Peaks, he gets to do some really, really crazy stuff performance wise. Some of it's here. You could see it. You could see the kind of qualities that they wanted to get out of him, and it's a very a performance that kind of makes or breaks the movie, honestly, is how much you emotionally care about this alien who is pretending to be an FBI agent, and two, that he doesn't reveal the act too soon, or that he doesn't that he kind of plays it so there's an alien who's comes here and just wants to be a pure destructive force, and there's another one who actually wants to try to blend in, even if he doesn't do it particularly well, and walking that line of trying to but not is something he does for basically the entire film, from the very first scene. I can't wait to rewatch this knowing what I know about the movie.
It also helps with the kind of more cliche, boring cop procedural stuff that is in this, where it's we don't get along, I'm partnered up with a guy I don't want to be, that whole thing. I was kind of bored at least a little bit in some of the I would say the first half hour of those procedural scenes, but then as the alien stuff starts to ramp up, especially with Kyle, I thought I was more intrigued and a little less bored. And to be honest, even those sequences with the general cop stuff, they're really short, and they get right back to the interesting alien stuff right away. So it really doesn't hinder it that much.
And the way too that they kind of play up that he has more information than Nouri does, and you're kind of unsure how it is that he has that information, and when he's just so this guy just went on a killing spree, and we found your guy is gone, and obviously Kyle already knows that this is an alien who's changing bodies, but he can't really say that to this cop because no one would fucking believe him. So it's very interesting watching him go like, now I'm looking for this guy. And then it turns out that guy just did the massacre in the record store. And Kyle's already there on the scene interviewing the witnesses before like Nuri's even showed up and stuff like that. Like there's a couple, sort of like neat little ways again that they sort of dish out information in those scenes. But you're right that they are playing in like a more kind of cliche mold. They're just trying to slightly hint at more mysterious, ominous qualities kind of like in the periphery of those scenes. And then once they start like kind of getting together and they both do like that big sort of like middle of the movie set piece where they're chasing down the alien who is now in the stripper's body, and that stuff honestly was some crazy shit in terms of the action as well. Like I loved when it just turns into like the rooftop shootout and there's these really great like sort of like dollies and pans around as Kyle is slowly investigating and looking kind of like back and forth trying to locate where this alien is, and then when they actually start like blasting it away, it's like really, really big squib work as this alien, his body is just being shredded. And there was something at a certain point that got creepy to me about this idea of this alien killing you and using your body. And then again, the emphasis on destruction is so perfect because then it just destroys that body.
It rides it right into the ground.
Yeah, and that actually kind of like freaked me out a little bit.
And also my favorite my favorite part of the and I do agree, like the movie has like this great opening scene, a good scene in the record store, and like they're peppered. But that once we get to the strip club, it really shifts. But my favorite bit of table setting is when the great Law and Order's great Richard Brooks shows up in the police station. He's like, "Hey guys, look, a flamethrower!" I'm like, Chekhov's flamethrower is fantastic in this. Where it's just
got everything.
Yes,
we just picked this
that
up.
That actually like melted my brain a little bit when it came back. I was like, what does he have in that case? And then as soon as I saw it, I was like, no.
It's so worth it. But I do love the man and the mannequin stuff. Obviously, it's they go pretty. obviously
the exploding heads on the mannequins. Yeah,
a mannequin factory, and like that's kind of that's what we're saying about bodies. They're just like, I don't know, these husks that kind of house people in them. You know what I mean? And like it is creepy, to your point, to have something that has no stake in the body. You know what I mean? Like the body is just literally a vehicle to run into the ground and buy a new one when you're done with it.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you sort of get sequences then in between that of using the body as this this tool, and then you get scenes of like Kyle looking in the mirror and touching his face and looking at the photos of the family, and you get this idea of like could it mean more that I am in this body? Could I do something good while I'm here? And that ends up actually paying off because I was kind of surprised. I thought it was going to end in the the big action set piece, but it actually does kind of have a dramatic ending as well to it that I was surprised about. So this movie was a big surprise, and it kind of delivered on more fronts than I expected to, while also just being a huge like what the fuck set piece machine that's really, really well done. Again, very sturdy, economically shot action scenes that hit just as well in terms of the squibs and the nastiness and the sort of like the simple way that the shots are framed and sort of stitched together. It's all done in like the kind of way that you would of the best of the 80s stuff that you would hope to see.
Right. And I think that's Jack Shoulder's kind of calling card a little bit. I mean, like Nightmare Part 2 is really those the action stuff in that, not action, but the action horror bits of Nightmare 2 on top of all of the
very
other stuff
solid,
all the other stuff going on in Nightmare 2, which makes Nightmare 2 amazing. And but all that's there. Wishmaster 2, the carnage in Wishmaster 2 is really fun. If you haven't gone there,
I haven't. I need to watch that.
Wishmaster I've always wanted to check out. So
the first two are really solid in terms, and I don't think Shoulder didn't do the first one. I forget who did the first one, but
Kurtzman.
Yes, and both of them have like. And they're not good, but they're very solid in terms of getting you what you want in the Halloween season. But I mean, again, there you go.
So I was just gonna ask. So Shoulder is really known for these like the kind of body carnage in a way, because I know that even in Nightmare 2, you have that that famous sequence of Freddy coming out of the teenager's body, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I guess he must be known for that.
Yeah,
I think
I've
only seen that other film from him. I'm not sure if I've seen anything else.
No, I've only seen a few.
I want to watch that Alone in the Dark.
Oh right, I do want to see that too.
with Donald Pleasance, that kind of looks like a slasher, but hard to I'd be curious about it anyway.
I'm putting that on my list for this October. I always make a list of horror movies to watch, and that sounds. I'm looking for the reason.
But speaking of that, the ending here when he kind of transfers into Beck's body, I was at first thinking that it was going to turn into this very almost completely optimistic and positive thing where he had the power to almost give his life energy to Beck, and and I thought his body was just kind of like, that's it, and Beck will be back. But I just loved that added little, almost like kind of dark twist in a way, where it ends up just he's going to take over Beck's body so that his family doesn't have to grieve, and that is it's nice that he's feeling like he can help the human beings in a sense, but there's a real darkness to like the girl looking at her father and not recognizing him and just kind of accepting it by the end.
Yeah, she knows for sure that something is up, which is kind of fascinating, and it's a really powerful, kind of cool, and McLaughlin's dead on the floor. It's a really, really wild ending to a very wild film.
Yeah, and I was surprised that they went that they ended it on that kind of a note. It was kind of there's a sadness, there's a kind of a relief in a way, but there's a darkness to it too. So
he's definitely doing like a very thoughtful kind of romantic gesture, but his way of doing it is like doing it in the it's alien and scary in the way that we've kind of seen throughout the rest of the film. And that's what's kind of interesting is that you kind of have to contrast the fact that this is kind of a movie about an alien who comes to Earth and just decides to callously take human life because it doesn't matter and the bodies don't matter. And, at one point he even says, like we could take this whole place over. Like there's nothing that could stop us. He's trying to argue that, the two aliens should team up and just dominate. And they could. They have so much power that if they wanted to, they could. And so the fact that, Kyle has that same power and he chooses to do something more, sort of grounded and graceful and, emotional is something that separates him from the other alien. And for the film, which again operates as this very destructively amazing set piece machine, to have such kind of like a graceful, but still, thorny, as you noted, kind of ending to it, I think is really strong. It really just elevates the film even further.
Yeah, it hit me in a way I didn't expect it, because I thought it was just going to be a very typical action ending. Like, they decide that they're both going to be like cops and they're just going to like help each other do crack cases or something. But it ended up being a lot thornier than I expected. So I really appreciated that.
Because everything has been so big and, and like, I do think the dinner scene, which is the only scene where you kind of get the internality of Kyle MacLachlan's character, is effective. And again, like, when the movie decides to end that way, it's both fitting but very surprising. You know what I mean? Because you don't, it could just be your classic, I'm getting too old for this shit situation. But they don't want to do that because they want to sort of, again, this movie does have some aspirations about talking about what it is to sort of be a presence inside of a body and what that means and what it means to lose a body. You know what I mean? Like when, the family would lose this person and they're going to lose this person no matter what, because that dude is dead. But now they get this husk of weird Kyle MacLachlan. I mean, I guess maybe he'll settle in better, but like,
we need a sitcom where he plays the father.
That dude was not knocking it out of the park in the human department, so I feel like he's not going to do so in Michael Nuri's body either.
What you need to do, Jamie, is eventually get around to Twin Peaks so that you can see Dougie Jones, because Twin Peaks: The Return is exactly what you're asking for.
Oh, nice!
It is literally like the family sitcom version of like Kyle is like basically kind of like this alien who doesn't understand anyone and has taken over the fatherly role of a family he previously was not a part of. Literally, that exact thing is what the majority of the new season was.
Holy shit.
So when you eventually get around to that, you will see that it's basically a sequel to The Hidden.
Hell yeah. You sold it to me even further somehow.
But yeah, and I think that stuff's really important because they kind of lay out these sort of like smaller sort of like domestic qualities, and it's such, you know, an intentional contradiction to the very, you know, to the point of parody, absurdly huge, destructive sequences that eventually take place. Because again, we talked about the one with the stripper on the rooftop, where you get like Beck kind of like hanging off in like this beautiful sort of like wide shot. You get the stripper eventually because she's like, "I'm not coming out yet. I'll kill you first," and she like front flips through the neon sign to her death. That's when like the dog takes over the body, and you can see Kyle getting so exasperated that they're like, it's like I literally wasn't looking at that body for like the 15 seconds it took me to like run down these stairs, and it has already changed over into this dog. And I love too that small detail of the paramedic or whoever the coroner guy arriving and being like, "Hey, look, it's none of my business, guys, but this lady had 15 bullet holes. You guys really love making my job like miserable." And either way, it ends up like continuing going on where they you know, he transfers into this dog, and great sequence of this dog acting as an alien. One of the best performances as the alien in the movie somehow. So good. The dog takes over this other dude who makes his way into the police station, and the Hidden gets to join the ranks of best action set pieces that take place inside of a police station, which is how it's directly referencing Terminator.
It just when he just rolls through this thing with a shotgun. He's got a rocket. He's armed to the teeth. It's fantastic. He steals the laser gun at one point, and then he gets it stolen away from him. And he's just killing people it is so wild.
And they're average looking because they're just taking over like cop bodies and stuff. So it's just awesome to see them in like a suit, like in the FBI badge, but they have RPGs and all this weaponry. It's just, it's not like the Terminator where you see a big Arnie and he's in a leather jacket and all that kind of stuff. It's almost comical.
It is, and like
apparently they floated getting the Michael Nouri character as like a big 80s action star, like someone like Arnold.
Really?
I don't know if the movie would have worked in that way.
I don't think so either. No.
You kind of needed like kind of like this like everyman kind of thing to experience this absurdity of the things that are happening around him. But when he goes in and he just like grabs an assault rifle, he grabs a rocket launcher, he grabs a grenade, and he comes out and he's just like, you know, where's the alien gun? Like, you're gonna take me to the alien prisoner. I'm gonna go. Got unfinished business with this guy, and he literally starts just like gunning cops down like left and right, and just destroying them again. Every single gunshot in this, huge impact, huge squib, blood smears all over the wall. Like they could not make this as, you know, destructive to the human body.
Yeah, it's pure carnage.
If they tried, they could not do it more. So you can tell that that's very intensely the focus of this movie, which is a direct counterpoint to the more emotional qualities you eventually see in some of the domestic scenes and later on in the film. But I love that those two things like clash up against each other in ways that you feel like they would, you know, sort of it could be seen as like kind of like a negative thing, or it could be seen as something where it's like, you know, inconsistent. But for me, it's like it's showing you two opposing modes of thinking about humans. You just, you know, one is a very callous and entertaining version of the human body as this decorative art piece meant to be sprayed all over the walls. I think that police sequence is just so sick. Everything is being destroyed. Danny Trejo is there for like 2 seconds to say, "Hey, what's up with you, hippie dude?" or whatever.
And he gets blown away, obviously. And the weird political part at the end is sort of, it makes some sense. It is a little out of nowhere.
It's a little like the movie maybe doesn't completely earn it, but I did like this idea of this very again sort of materialistic consumerist way of thinking. The end goal is, I'm fucking president, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't hate that idea.
And like it's you know, you're doing the little Manchurian Candidate. One of the cops, another cop gets it and gets out, and tries to kill this senator, and this is another great set piece where we're going through this hotel. You watch the Secret Service have to shuttle him, and of course it's a New Line movie, so Lynn Shay is involved. I kept thinking she was going to be the hidden at some point, and I was kind of disappointed that she wasn't. But yeah, they shuttled them into a closet and more shootout stuff. This is when Michael Nouri kind of gets it, and it's effective because you kind of Nouri gets shot earlier in the film too, so we're kind of setting up that he is definitely vulnerable and his family is in danger, and I just kind of
it mirrors that moment too, where he looks at Kyle at one point during that police station shootout, and he's kind of freaked out by the fact that this whole time he's also been working with an alien, because that's where that is revealed to him in the plot, and he says, what the hell are you? And Kyle just gives him this blank stare, and the follow-up question is so good. It's, do you feel pain? And he says, yeah. And just a very flat, yeah, I do. And then that's such a good mirrored moment to when Kyle has to watch him take the gut shots and die, where you're just like, yeah, like that, this is part of being a person relating to a person, is watching someone else, experience pain right in front of your eyes and stuff like that. And again, it's just stuff that's like laid out in like a single moment between two actors or a single line of dialogue. It sounds like just very simple stuff, but it's the kind of stuff that a lot of movies honestly forget to do in between their action set pieces.
And it's surprising to watch one of the buddy cops die. You know what I mean? If a buddy
never happens.
If a buddy cop movie happens, one of them gets shot in the shoulder and then he's in the hospital. It's like, you're going to be okay, buddy. And you kind of expect that from this movie specifically because it's working in that mold. But again, this movie just really wants to surprise you at every turn, and it really does.
Yeah, which is why that ending, once again, works so well, I think.
You go.
Oh, I was gonna say, that is what leads to, because that is what eventually really gets essentially under Kyle's character's skin, is that he just watched this dude who he thinks is kind of like this noble person who's trying to do the right thing and trying to help him, and the one person who actually believes that he is this alien on an intergalactic chase movie. And when the alien eventually takes over the senator's body, which was, kind of like this crazy moment where, they're interviewing him and he's like, I'd like to be president. And he's licking his lips and you're like, oh, fucking what? And then you just get this incredible sequence of Kyle, who's, very, distressed about the death of his partner again, as he's slow-mo running at the senator. He's taking shots from the cops and the security. Squibs are blowing up like his elbows and his shoulders as he's hurtling himself towards the senator. Then the alien senator pulls out a gun and starts shooting at him, and you're kind of like, no one thought anything was weird when that happened. And Kyle is running at him again with this briefcase.
Yes.
And when he drops that briefcase on the ground, he opens it up, and it's the fucking flamethrower that they picked off apparently off a random. Yeah, they picked it up off a random dude on the street. It's a small line of dialogue earlier in the film where that Steve mentioned, where the cop just is like, yeah, what do you think of this? This is kind of quirky. We found this on the streets of LA.
It's a propane tank with a handle. This thing is so weird looking. I love it.
Yeah, it is.
Yes. And dude, he just in full slow-mo lights the senator up. He is on fire. His skin is charred as the fucking slug is coming out. Kyle is straight up wielding it like fucking, what was the character that Leo was playing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
With the Rick Dalton.
In the
Oh yeah.
Yes, but in the actual movie he's in the movie, where he's burning up all the Nazis and stuff. That's exactly what Kyle is doing. And it's just not what you're watching a buddy cop movie, you're watching a sci-fi movie. You don't think it's going to end with Kyle pulling out a giant flamethrower, shredding a senator, and then the slug sliding out of the mouth, and he explodes it with his alien gun once it's out of the body. And
man.
What?
I love
a satisfying fucking set piece to kind of conclude your movie on.
Yeah,
I love
already crazy film.
I love the one lady, like he burns the senator and everyone's like, oh shit, this is really bad. And everyone like, it's a room full of press. They all drop to the floor and they cut to this one woman like, hey, look. And the bug pulls out like, what is the headline the next day is my question.
Bug falls out of senator who was burned to death.
And I feel like Kyle MacLachlan is still going to jail for the rest of his life for killing a senator, a bug or no bug. I feel. I don't know if they're going to believe the alien bit. I mean, it's a bit odd, but you know.
Yeah, hell of a court case to look into.
they were like, sometimes people got slugs in them, you know, like no, you can't kill them for that. I love too. There's one brief moment when he's just, you know, lit the senator up and he's, you know, his body is burning in front of everyone's eyes. There's a brief shot. It's a close up of Kyle's face with literally like 30 guns in his face.
Yeah,
right,
of like every cop, every security guard, every single person in that room who has a gun is in his face. Like it's literally that John Wick poster,
right? Yeah.
Of all the guns around him. But it's, yeah. Either way, that stuff is so good. And then, like, if the movie had ended there, I would have been pretty satisfied. Definitely. Which is kind of crazy because then it has this added sequence that we've already kind of talked about. But again, you know, where Kyle sees that, you know, the death of this partner is going to cause more pain and grief than just to him. It's going to cause it to his family. And seeing that and observing that, he decides that when he dies, he transfers his life force into him. And he's going to now take the place and, you know, relieve some of that pain rather than, you know, cause the destruction that the alien has been, you know, inflicting through everyone else. And it's a very sort of emotionally affecting kind of gesture. And it's a very clearly laid out choice that he makes over the course of the film and seeing what he sees. And then just ending on that shot of them touching hands. And it's such a counterpoint to the inhumanity of the opening scene, which is literally has the distancing effect of you watching it on security cam footage of just a dude walking in and massacring people. It's like the exact opposite is a close up of just two hands touching.
yeah, definitely.
It's so again, this movie is strangely affecting. It's smart. It's very well done, and it is, you know, while doing that, a completely unpretentious and absurd action movie in every way that you could hope. It's
pure fun.
Honestly. Yeah, like I was kind of blown away by this, like pivoting to reductive rating round. This honestly, I think is going to get the high from me. I might even need to rewatch it because like I was gotta say very shocked by this, that a movie that has such like an absurd premise of like The Thing or Body Snatchers meets like a cop drama. It has a very schlocky sci-fi intergalactic chase movie, but it is handled with like the right amount of like absurd action beats and serious enough acting that you care about the people when they're massacred.
That's the thing, they are taking this movie seriously in a way.
Yeah,
there's jokes, but they like the craft itself is
it's not like Dead Heat, which is like a straight up parody of this kind of thing done in like a similar kind of genre.
You don't have the comedian cop like saying jokes about his ex-wife and all that shit.
No, but what's strange is that normally you would think, you know, like if the movie is schlocky, like sometimes taking it too seriously is a problem. Yeah. But it takes it the perfect amount of serious, just enough that the drama actually works.
Exactly.
Which is like, you know, again, so to walk that line while also basically, you know, being this seamless, ridiculous action science fiction film done just with, again, solid suspense sequence, solid, sturdy action movie competence, a very propulsive pace to it that, again, opens on something so crazy that how could you top it? The movie does top it in its final moments, which is, you know, something that not every movie can pull off either. So, yeah. And again, it is all about two contrasting visions of people by two aliens. One that loves hair metal and strip clubs.
Hell yeah.
And shredding everybody that it can find in sight with crazy squibs and possessed dogs.
Sounds like a
and
cool
insane
guy.
Body horror. He's a really cool guy, but he very callously just disregards the humanity of
Besides
everyone else
murder.
in his surroundings. Besides the insane murder. Other than that, he's cool though.
Other than that, he's a rock and roller, man.
And again, just the fact that it somehow works its way around into you really watching this alien choose to give some semblance of life back to this human. It's both kind of creepy because the way that he does it is by literally taking over his body the same way we've watched what would have taken this to the next level is if he had to change bodies with the same slug way, and it was gross watching him transfer into the dad's
instead
body.
of this like angelic golden beam.
Yes.
Yeah.
That might have been even, hammered home that complication even more, but without even that, it's still there.
I'm imagining that
very,
that
very
scene
effective.
now, and it's just so much. It's almost better. It really is, because it's just like you have that emotional side where he's just like, okay, well, he's gone now, and then to turn, instead of the like, glowing and beautiful beam of golden light, it's just
It's like he's vomiting a space slug, but it's like green instead of black, and that's how you know it's the good one or whatever.
It's like the lightsabers in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that would have been unreal. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this is like the high 4 for me. I was very close to the 5, honestly. What stopped me was mostly the kind of stuff like in the first half hour where it's a very just kind of general cop procedural thing where it's just like, oh, I'm being partnered up with someone I don't want to be partnered with, all that stuff. But I will say having Kyle do his kind of alien acting throughout it does give a little bit of an extra intrigue. It was stopping me from giving it that, like, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life, because all the action sequences are just insane. There's so much carnage, so many squibs. The body is just being torn apart in every single action sequence. And I'm not sure if the cop procedural parts quite get there with the dialogue, but it's still very intriguing. And as it proceeds, it gets more and more aliens, so I was definitely more interested as it goes on when it came to the cops. But that being said, I think the thorniness of the ending is really cool too and interesting. I didn't expect that, and this was it's a wild ride. Check it out and try to go into it blank. I guess if you're already listening to this, you've heard everything, but going in blank, I think, is just the best way to do this, because there's so many fun surprises that happen when you think it's just going to be kind of a buddy cop film, and it turns into something way weirder. So 4 out of 5 for now.
Yeah, I'm right there. I think it's one of the more surprising movies that I've seen in a long time, and just not, especially being made in that reductive time of just like we churn out these buddy cop movies all the time, and I think what makes the emotion work at the end is not only the performances and not only all the other stuff going on, but there's no one-liners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and there's so much room for them at any given time. And I keep expecting Kyle to have one at the end when he burns the senator up or what. Any of those, it could be there and it would actually ruin the movie a little bit. And they don't do that. There's a real sensitivity between McLaughlin and Nori, which again, it's, they're both dudes and it's, there's a lot of masculinity, but it's not, but he kind of, when Nori finds out he's an alien, there's this kind of greatness of, he kind of feels a little hurt by it. You know what I mean? Like, obviously he's like he's a macho dude. So he's pissed about the case or whatever, but it's obviously like, I thought I knew who you were, man. Now you're a fucking alien. I think that scene actually plays really well for me. And I think, it's a weird. It's widely available. It's on Amazon and all that crap. So it's not super hidden, pun intended. But it's just odd that I never heard of this movie. I've never. It's not one of those movies that gets brought up in this ilk of like crazy 80s action insanity, and
it needs to be.
It does need to be. I loved it, and I do think it pairs well with Cat People as the second half of it, just because it kind of gives you all that you want, which is just like, could someone just turn the fucking volume up, please? And that's what this movie does, and it's a good midnight watch for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that will wrap it up for this week's episode. That was Cat People from 1982 and The Hidden from 1987. Thanks so much, Stephen, for joining us and for bringing these films with you. If you have anything to plug while you're here, usually this is where we have you do that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm part of a podcast called We Hate Movies, WHMpodcast.com. We review movies every week in comedic fashion. Try not to do the whole bad movie thing too much. Movies that we like, movies that we don't like, all kind of fit in the same bucket of just kind of silliness that we try and share with you folks each and every week. We have a very vivacious Patreon with various levels and a ton of bonus content. So if you like the show, you should check that out. Patreon.com/WeHateMovies. And we're going on tour, just an FYI. If you are in the Midwest, if you are in Cleveland, Ohio, Chicago, Illinois, and or Detroit, Michigan in mid-October, the 13th, the 14th, and the 16th, we're doing shows on Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Taken, and RoboCop 3. So please check those out. And then we're going back on the tour, back on the road in the southeast in Charlotte, North Carolina, in November 18th. Asheville, North Carolina, November 19th, and Nashville, Tennessee, November 21st, doing Under Siege, Junior, and Footloose, respectively. So thank you guys for having me, and I hope to see you guys on the road.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, do it up. Yeah, and if anyone hasn't listened, I would recommend going and listening to my episode of We Hate Movies that is out there. I went on and talked about Charles Bronson's 10 to Midnight craziness of the cop movie
dildos.
meets the slasher movie. And yes, it's for jerking off, isn't it? Have not stopped thinking about that line. Thank you, Charles Bronson.
Incredible.
But yeah, I can definitely recommend the We Hate Movies boys. For our listeners, we're going to be back in 1 week's time, where we are going to be kicking off Spooktober, which for most of the old listeners, everyone should know. For all of October, we do nothing but talk about horror movies. We, at some point we talk about horror movies throughout the year, but we do nothing but. And actually this year, looking back at our list, we did a lot of action and crime and science fiction stuff this year. We didn't do as much horror as we do most years, so we're going to go crazy, and we're going to kick off Spooktober next week with an episode on Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace and Dario Argento's Bird with the Crystal Plumage. We're going to go Giallo mode, and then in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back with the first free episode, and we have a very special guest who's going to talk vampires with us. We're going to be talking Daughters of Darkness from 1971 or 1972, one of those sort of like OG kind of like erotic vampire horror kind of films, and we're going to be pairing it with none other than Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula.
Oh, buddy.
1992, a movie that a lot of the patrons have been asking us to do for a long time. So we're finally going to get around to doing that in 2 weeks' time.
That movie is insane.
Spooktober is here. It's crazy. It's upon us. Everyone should be, getting their jack-o'-lanterns out, getting ghostly, getting the vibe going, and watching a bunch of horror films, which is what we're going to be doing on the show, as well as, outside the show, I'm going to be doing that too, because...
nonstop.
That's who we are.
Never stop.
But yeah, that being said, that wraps it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.
Yes.
I didn't know if I'm supposed to say that.
Nailed it. No, you've joined the ranks of like 10 people who have done it, and they are our favorite guests.
Great. I'm the 11th. I love it.
We welcome it.